This is the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT. This is the Prime model from Asus. Asus sent this card over for review. However, all thoughts and opinions are my own. And now let's see what you get in the box. Obviously, you're going to get the card itself, the RX 9060 XT. You also get a quick start guide and a thank you message. And that's it. And here we are, another day and another GPU review. This is the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT. Like I've already said, it is the Prime model from Asus. And today I will be comparing it to the 5060 Ti, also from Asus, but this is the tough gaming model. Now, I already have a full dedicated review video on the 5060 Ti, so feel free to check that out if you're interested. But yeah, today we're checking out the 9060 XT, and I'm comparing it to a 5060 Ti because that is what it is supposed to be compared to. If you know, you know. And now, as for today's video, I will be following my normal GPU review process. If you have seen any of my GPU content in 2025, that is what you can expect from today's video. But before we get into that, I just want to say I will have a special message at the end of this video, which I realize 99% of you probably won't make it to the end of the video. But for those of you that do, thank you in advance. And I'm just letting you know up front there will be a special message at the end of that. All right, let's get into the video itself. In today's video, we've already covered the unboxing. Now we will go into design and specifications of the 9060 XT. Then we'll get into thermal testing, gaming benchmarks, and my overall final thoughts. And here's all the hardware used for all of the testing done in today's video. So all the results you'll see today, from thermals to gaming benchmarks, are from the hardware that you see on the screen right now. I won't take the time to cover all the parts, but they are there for those who are interested. Feel free to pause the video and take a look. Okay, so the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT has 32 compute units, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM on a 128-bit memory interface, and the rated game clock speed is 2.5 gigahertz, and the boost clock speed is up to 3.1 gigahertz. The Affinity cache is 32 megabytes, and the TBP, which AMD refers to as typical board power on their website, is 160 watts. However, with this being an OC model from Asus, we're actually able to hit up to 175 watts on this particular model. And finally, all of this is running on AMD's RDNA 4 architecture. And now let's switch over and start talking about the Asus specific specifications of this 9060 XT. Now, one nice thing about going with an AMD GPU this generation is that AMD is not forcing their partners to use the 12-volt high-power connector. You will see some 9000 series GPUs from AMD partners that do use the 12-volt high-power connector, but Asus has opted to use the traditional 8-pin connector on the 9000 series cards for all of their models. And this particular model has a single 8-pin connector. And even though this particular card is not using the 12-volt high-power connector, it still has a red dedicated LED light that will let you know if your 8-pin power connector is not properly connected. Now, the Asus Prime 9060 XT OC model has a triple fan design. All three fans are Axial Tech fans. All three fans do have dual ball bearings, and this card does support a 0 dB mode. All three fans will come to a stop when the GPU temperatures fall below 55°C. And all three fans will start up again once the temperatures rise above 60°C. And speaking of cooling, let's flip the card over and look at the back side. And as you can see, we do have a fairly large vented area on the back plate. This will allow for more heat dissipation and greater airflow. In addition to that, Asus claims to have an exclusive manufacturing technique, which they refer to as max contact heat spreader. And the short version is that the overall temperatures can be up to 2°C lower. In terms of overall design, this card is only a 2.5 slot card, making it perfect for small form factor builds. Or at least I should probably say it allows for greater compatibility amongst all the different PC cases out there. But these days it's very common to see very large GPUs, making it harder and harder to go small form factor. So a 2.5 slot design on a card like this is actually very good. I will have the official dimensions of the card on the screen right now for your reference. And in terms of I/O, this card is fairly slim pickings. We have 2 DisplayPort 2.1A ports and 1 HDMI 2.1B port, surrounded by a 304 stainless steel bracket. And one final design mention before we get into the actual testing, and that is the GPU guard and bracket that Asus has added on this GPU. GPUs are getting bigger and bigger and heavier, and the 40 series cards were known to have some cracks and breaks on the PCB and around the GPU die itself. And so this is the solution that Asus has come up with to hopefully mitigate that from happening. And now it's time to switch over and start talking about thermal testing. So this card does have a dual BIOS, and so out of the box it is in the performance mode marked with a P on the card. You can manually switch it over to the quiet mode marked with a Q. Now the difference is very simple. The performance mode will run a little bit louder, but it will also run colder, therefore giving you better performance. The quiet mode will be quieter, but it will run hotter because the fans will not have as high of an RPM. For the following temperatures, I will only read out the maximum temperature achieved. However, the averages and all the other information will be on the screen for those who are interested. While sitting idle on the desktop, the maximum GPU temperature was 37°C. The maximum GPU memory junction temperature was 36°C. The maximum GPU hotspot temperature was 40°C. The maximum total graphics power was 6.7 watts. The maximum total board power was 12.6 watts. The GPU fan RPM is all zeros across the board thanks to the 0 dB mode supported by this card. Now, while running a Furmark stress test with the performance BIOS mode, the maximum GPU temperature was 52°C. The maximum GPU memory junction temperature was 70°C. The maximum GPU hotspot temperature was 73°C. The maximum total graphics power was 147 watts. The maximum total board power was 175 watts. And the maximum fan RPM was 1700 RPM. And finally, switching over to the quiet BIOS option, the maximum GPU temperature was 60°C. The maximum GPU memory junction temperature was 82°C. The maximum GPU hotspot temperature was 82°C. The maximum total graphics power was 150 watts. And the maximum total board power was 175 watts. And the maximum fan RPM was 863 RPM. And now the operating behavior is exactly what we would expect to see here. The performance mode had a higher fan RPM, putting out more noise, but the overall temperatures were lower. And the quiet mode had a lower fan RPM, therefore it had less noise, but the temperatures were higher. So everything is functioning exactly as expected. And now I want to switch over and do a quick benchmark with Affinity Photo, which is a linear benchmark. And then I want to talk about FSR4 and then talk about gaming benchmarks and finish up with my overall final thoughts. Okay, so I ran the built-in benchmark in Affinity Photo, and again, this is a linear benchmark, and all we care about here is the raster score for the single GPU, which you can see is 1078. The higher, the better, and I don't have any comparative data here, but I did want to share this data simply because I do have viewers who do appreciate this. And now let's switch over and start talking about FSR4, which is brand new from AMD for this GPU generation. So FSR4 is AMD's brand new FSR upscaling technology. It is officially using an AI upscaler here, and this is their direct competitor to DLSS 4. At the time of this recording, AMD's official website says they support about 65 games with FSR 4. Now, how do you enable FSR 4? Now, the game needs to support FSR 3.1 to begin with. You have to launch the game and enable FSR 3.1, and then you need to shut the game down, and then you need to go into the Adrenaline software and manually activate FSR 4, or you can simply click the Hyper RX button, which will also automatically activate it. And so if you've done everything correctly and if the game is supported, then when you launch into the game, you can hit Alt R on your keyboard to pull up the Adrenaline overlay, and then you can tell for sure that FSR4 is in fact active. If it is not active, you will have a yellow exclamation point. Now, with all of that out the way, let's take a look at Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. In my previous GPU reviews for the 9070 and 9070 XT, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart was not yet supported, and so I showed off FSR4 with God of War Ragnarok. And now that Ratchet & Clank is supported, I wanted to do a different game just to make sure that the visual clarity was not a fluke with God of War Ragnarok. And as you can see here, as clear as day, it's not a visual fluke at all. FSR4 does in fact look absolutely amazing. I'm very impressed with the overall fidelity of this technology. I think this is a massive step in the right direction for AMD. And so if you're somebody looking to enable an upscaling technology, while NVIDIA might ever so slightly still be ahead and have the advantage, FSR4 is an easy recommendation, and I have no problems recommending recommending it. And now I want to point out some software considerations. So whenever you buy a new GPU, you have a whole multitude of options to choose from on how to manage that GPU with software. With this being an AMD GPU, you will likely need to download the AMD Adrenalin software because that is going to maintain your driver updates. And in this software, you can definitely overclock or undervolt the GPU. You can power limit it. You can make an on-screen display for monitoring gaming performance. And there's a whole host of other features available within the software. In addition to that, this is an Asus GPU, and Asus has their own software called GPU Tweak 3. And in that software, you can also overclock the GPU or undervolt it or power limit it and create an on-screen display to monitor gaming performance. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and switch over and talk about the actual gaming benchmarks. Here's what to expect. All of these benchmarks will be out of the box benchmarks. That means I am testing the GPUs with the out of the box features and specifications. No overclocking, no undervolting, no power limiting, no special fan curves or anything like that. I have the 9060 XT versus the 5060 Ti. Both GPUs are Asus GPUs. Both GPUs have a dual BIOS that is set to the performance BIOS option. All of these benchmarks will be ran at 1440p, and I will have the graphical quality settings on the screen for you to view. Now, without any further ado, let's get into it. And starting off with Assassin's Creed Mirage, we have native 1440p on the ultra high quality preset. And as you can see, the 9060 XT has an average FPS of 97 with a 1% low of 70 FPS. And the 5060 Ti has an average FPS of 99 with a 1% low of 77 FPS. Now, I'm only going to say this for this benchmark, but it will apply to all the other benchmarks. To the best of my knowledge, all the numbers you see on the screen are being accurately recorded as I double check them with the AMD Adrenalin software overlay and the NVIDIA software overlay as well. For the most part, pretty much all the numbers are rock solid. The only two things that kind of concern me are the temperatures and the power consumption. So according to what you're seeing here, and you will continue to see this on all the other benchmarks as well, the 9060 XT pretty much always pulls in more power than the 5060 Ti. However, somehow the 9060 XT always runs colder. And this is the Prime OC model versus the Tough Gaming OC model. So technically speaking, the 5060 Ti should be just as cold, if not even a little colder. It is possible the 5060 Ti has some type of inaccurate reporting, as I know NVIDIA did have a driver issue earlier this year when it came to reporting temperatures. But I can definitely confirm that the frame rates and the clock speeds are all completely accurate, so nothing to worry about there. Next up is Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on the balance preset at native 1440p. I ran the in-game built-in benchmark, and to no one's surprise, the 9060 XT blows the 5060 Ti out of the water here. AMD hardware does so well with Call of Duty titles. Pretty much if you're a diehard Call of Duty player, AMD GPUs are where you want to be. As you can see, the 9060 XT has an average of 136 FPS to the 5060 Ti's 99 FPS, and the 1% lows are also drastic as well, with the 9060 XT having 106 FPS and the 5060 Ti having only 76 FPS. Next up, we have Forza Horizon 5, and this is native 1440p with everything maxed out. This does include ray tracing. As you can see, the 9060 XT has 113 FPS on average with a minimum of 95 FPS, and the 5060 Ti has an average of 115 FPS with a minimum of 98 FPS. This built-in benchmark does not report 1% lows. Next up is Cyberpunk 2077, native 1440p on the Ultra preset, and as you can see, the 5060 Ti ever so slightly beats out the 9060 XT again, 115 FPS to 113 FPS, and 98 FPS to 95 FPS for the minimum. Again, this built-in benchmark does not report 1% lows. Next up, we're taking it up a notch to the Ultra Ray Tracing preset. The 9060 XT has 30 FPS on average with a minimum of 25 FPS. Meanwhile, the 5060 Ti has an average of 35 FPS with a minimum of 29 FPS. The win here goes to the 5060 Ti. And next up, we have Doom the Dark Ages, and this is native 1440p on the Ultra Nightmare preset. And this particular game actually requires you to have a GPU that can run ray tracing in order to play this game. So the performance you're looking at here does in fact include ray tracing as well. I am not using any upscaling technologies here, so just keep in mind you could enable DLSS or FSR here and get better frame rates. And now speaking of frame rates, the overall performance is nearly identical here. Anytime there is a difference, it's usually in favor of the 5060 Ti. The overall averages are slightly in favor of the 5060 Ti, but more or less, this is basically identical performance. Okay, so how do I feel about the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT? Overall, it is a good GPU, but there are two different models, an 8GB model and a 16GB model, and I would recommend, if you can, avoid buying an 8GB card in 2025. 8GB GPUs are already struggling in modern day AAA titles. There are plenty of videos on YouTube to show that. You can look it up, but at the end of the day, if you can afford it, definitely get the 16GB model. Next up, this is an Asus GPU, and I really do have people ask me, hey, do you really recommend Asus GPUs? Do you really like them? And the honest answer is yes, I do. The cold hard truth is this: I have played with all of their cards in every class, from Strix to Tough Gaming, the Astral, and now Prime OC. And I could be honest here, Prime OC is at the bottom of the stack. It is. I would definitely much rather prefer to have a Tough Gaming or a Strix or an Astral over a Prime OC. With that being said though, in this particular class of GPU, the 9060 XT, I could see why somebody would want to save as much money as possible. You're getting a 9060 XT partially due to the price of it, instead of going for something like, a 9070 XT or a 5090 or a 5080 or 5070 Ti, any of those cards, right? You're definitely going to be a little bit more budget conscious in this class of GPU, and that is where the Prime OC really shines, because it's going to be cheaper than something like the Tough Gaming, for example. And now, speaking of pricing, this card, according to AMD, has an MSRP of $350 for the 16GB model, which is the only model I recommend. However, AIBs will be charging more in most cases, and Asus is no different here. This Asus card specifically goes for $439, so it is definitely a markup over the MSRP, unfortunately. However, I want to show you something very interesting. This is a chart from TechSpot.com. Now, according to this chart, there are 18 games that have been benchmarked at 1440p. And using the US MSRP of $350, you can see the 9060 XT 16GB model is number 2 on the list. This is a great value proposition GPU, especially at that price. However, the problem comes in, this card is not that price. So now when we look at the cost per frame retail pricing in the US, you can see that there is a price on here for $430, which is much closer to the actual cost of this specific GPU. And even there, you can see it is still number 4 on the list. Now, that price does not match the Asus price of $440, so I went ahead and did the math for you. And as you can see, it is still a great value proposition. It's number 5 on the list at that price point, and it's still way ahead of the 5060 Ti. Now, with that being said, let's talk about how this compares to the 5060 Ti. The 5060 Ti has a 128-bit memory interface, just like the 9060 XT. Both cards have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. For the most part, these two cards are one and the same. So you're really looking at the price. That's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. And when you look at the pricing, the 9060 XT is a better value proposition across the board. So yeah, that's it. The 9060 XT is a decent 1440p GPU. It's basically the same performance as a 5060 Ti, and it's a lot cheaper than a 5060 Ti. It is a great value proposition, and overall, I do recommend it. I did not experience any driver issues with the 9060 XT. Everything for me worked totally fine, and I have also worked with the 9070 and 9070 XT. Both of those cards also had great driver support as well. So I think overall, anybody who may be worried about using AMD because of the drivers, it's not really something to be concerned with anymore. So definitely don't worry about that. Okay, so what is my special message? Well, I wanted to let you know that I have some really awesome events, projects, things coming up. And I want you, the people that actually appreciate the content, to be some of the first people to know, because 99% of the people who started this video did not make it this far. So you're getting a little bit of a preview of some of the upcoming things. I have had requests to start live streaming and talking about tech live. I'm going to honor that request, and I'm working on bringing live streams to this YouTube channel around like a once a week schedule, and we'll see how it goes from there. Number 2, I've also had requests from people to open up channel memberships, because people say, hey, I would love to support you, join the Discord, get some of the other benefits, but I don't really want to do Patreon. And you know what? Thank you for the feedback. I hear you. I'm going to honor that by opening up channel memberships here on the channel, and we'll probably do it around the same time we start live streaming. And finally, speaking of benefits on Patreon that are coming over here to YouTube, I am launching my very first ever application. It's an app that I have been working on and off again for the last 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years. I've lost track at this point. It is basically a console UI for PC gamers. I'm currently beta testing it with some of my Patreon members and other tech YouTubers. When it's ready, I'm going to launch it. And if you're a channel member or a Patreon member, you can get access, but more information coming soon on that. With all that being said, I only ever felt comfortable risking the financial investment into this application simply because of the financial support of all of my Patreon members. And so I just want to say thank you so much for supporting me on that level, because it truly means a lot. And I can't wait for the rest of you to use this application and hopefully get some value out of it. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got for the video. If you appreciate it, hit the like button, get subscribed, and I'll see you in the comment section down below. And until next time, E-Rock out.